AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter's mom move into our house after she got sick. Even though it means my husband says I don't have compassion. I, 38F, have been married to my husband, Eric, 42M, for 6 years. He has a daughter, Lily, 15F, from his previous marriage to his ex-wife, Sarah, 40F. I don't have kids of my own, though I've always tried to be a good stepmom to Lily. Things between me and Sarah have always been civil, but never warm. She's one of those people who's friendly on the surface, but has a passive-aggressive undertone to everything. She's made comments about how I get to play house while she does the real parenting, and she's criticized my cooking, my clothes, and once even my handwriting on a birthday card I wrote for Lily. I've mostly ignored it for Lily's sake. Sarah and Eric split up when Lily was around 8. It wasn't a messy divorce, but it was emotionally draining for him. He said Sarah always had to be in control and would guilt him if things didn't go her way. When he and I started dating, she wasn't thrilled, but eventually accepted it. Over the years, we've developed a somewhat manageable co-parenting rhythm. Lily spends every other week with us and the rest with her mom. This summer, Sarah was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. It's been really hard on Lily. She's scared, and I completely understand that. Sarah doesn't have close family nearby. Her parents live out of state, and she's an only child. Eric and I have tried to step up for Lily, taking her to appointments, helping with homework, and trying to make home life feel stable. About a month ago, Sarah's condition worsened. She started chemotherapy, and it hit her hard. She was hospitalized briefly for dehydration, and she's been too weak to cook or clean. Lily has been really upset, saying she feels guilty leaving her mom alone during her weeks with us. Eric has been torn. He wants to support Sarah as the mother of his child, but he also has to maintain boundaries for our family's sake. Then, 2 weeks ago, Sarah called Eric and asked for something that I honestly still can't believe. She wanted to move into our house, temporarily, she said, while she underwent treatment. Her reasoning was that Lily could be with both parents, she'd have help nearby, and she wouldn't be a burden because she'd stay in our guest room and just need meals and some company. When Eric told me, I thought he was joking. I told him immediately that I wasn't comfortable with it. Having Sarah, his ex-wife, living under our roof would be unbearably awkward. She and I barely tolerate each other as it is, and she's made it clear she doesn't respect me as a step-parent. I told him I could help in other ways, bringing her meals, helping organize rides to appointments, even hiring a part-time caregiver if needed, but not moving her in. Eric said I was being cold and selfish. He said this isn't about me and Sarah. It's about Lily, who's terrified of losing her mom. He said letting Sarah stay with us would show Lily that we can all come together in a crisis. He argued that it would be temporary, maybe 2 or 3 months, and that Sarah wouldn't be strong enough to cause any drama. I told him I understood his point, but it's not just about comfort. It's about boundaries. This is our home, my home. I work remotely and spend most of my day here. The idea of tiptoeing around his ex-wife in my own kitchen makes my stomach churn. I told him I'd support other arrangements, but not that one. He was furious. He accused me of putting my pride above compassion. He said he thought he married someone who could see beyond ego and do the right thing. That really hurt, because I've done nothing but try to be supportive throughout all this. I told him that compassion doesn't have to mean martyrdom. After a few tense days, he dropped it, or so I thought. But last weekend, Lily broke down crying at dinner and said she knows I hate her mom and that I'm keeping her from being with both parents. Apparently, Sarah told her that she wanted to stay with us, but some people don't want her there. I was furious. I confronted Eric later, and he admitted he told Sarah that I was the one who said no. Now I'm the villain in Lily's eyes. She barely talks to me. Eric says I should take the high road and not let it get to me, but I'm angry that he threw me under the bus. I told him if he keeps undermining me, he's risking our marriage. He said I'm making everything about me again. 2 nights ago, he told me Sarah's condition is deteriorating faster than expected, and she might not have much time left. He asked me to reconsider, just until the end. I said no again, because I don't think living under the same roof with his dying ex-wife is a healthy situation for anyone, least of all me. I told him to focus on Lily, not on trying to play hero to Sarah. Now his family is weighing in. His mother called to say she's disappointed in me, that she thought I was more empathetic. Even my own sister said she gets why I feel uncomfortable, but that this might be the time to set that aside for the bigger picture. I feel like I'm being ganged up on for trying to protect my own peace. I'm not heartless. I've sent food to Sarah. I've picked Lily up from her house when she was too tired to drive. I've even helped organize a fundraiser for her medical costs. But I draw the line at sharing my home with a woman who has made me feel small for years, no matter how sick she is. Eric and I haven't really spoken much since our last argument. He's staying up late in the guest room, thinking things through. I feel like a stranger in my own marriage. I love him, and I care deeply about Lily, but I can't shake the feeling that if I cave now, I'll lose all boundaries in this relationship. Still, I keep wondering if I'm being too rigid. If I'll look back and regret not being the bigger person. I don't want Lily to resent me forever. I don't want Eric to think I'm cruel. But I also don't want to be a doormat for someone who never respected me, especially not in my own house. So, am I really the asshole for refusing to let my husband's sick ex-wife move in with us, even if it means everyone thinks I'm heartless? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's no gifts wedding after finding out he made an exception for our parents' expensive present. So I, 28F, have a younger brother, Matt, 26M, who's always been the golden child in my family. He's charming, does well at work, and somehow manages to get away with everything, from crashing my car when he was 18 to skipping out on chores and letting me take the blame growing up. I mostly accepted that dynamic, though I've learned to keep my distance in adulthood. Matt got engaged last year to Emily, 25F. I actually really like Emily. She's sweet, organized, and honestly a saint for putting up with my family's constant drama. When they announced the engagement, everyone was thrilled, and the planning started immediately. Except about 6 months ago, they decided to go for what they called a minimalist wedding. They sent out digital invitations that specifically said, in bold letters, "No gifts. Your presence is the only present we want." I thought that was kind of nice, actually. Weddings can get so materialistic, and it seemed thoughtful that they wanted people just to show up and celebrate. I even offered to help with decorations or setup instead of buying something, but Emily told me, "No, we really want everyone to just relax and enjoy the day." Fast forward to about a month before the wedding. My parents invited me to dinner. Over dessert, my mom mentioned she and my dad had finally decided what they were going to give Matt and Emily for their wedding present. I was confused, so I said, "Wait, aren't they doing a no-gift thing?" My dad laughed and said, "Oh, that's just for guests. Of course we're still giving something meaningful." Then my mom added, "We're giving them the lake cabin." The lake cabin is our grandparents' old property, a cozy 2-bedroom place that's been in our family for decades. We all grew up spending summers there, and I love that place. After my grandparents passed, my parents inherited it, but they'd always said it would be split between Matt and me someday. I even helped pay for repairs a few years ago when the roof started leaking, around $3,000 total. So when I heard that they were giving the entire cabin to Matt and Emily, I was stunned. I said, "Wait, hold on. You're giving them a cabin? The one you said would be ours to share." My dad waved it off and said something like, "Well, you don't even use it that much, and Matt's the one starting a family soon. It just makes more sense." I tried to stay calm, but I was furious. I asked if Matt even knew about this, and my mom said, "Of course. He's thrilled. We thought it'd be a nice surprise for him at the wedding." So not only were they giving him the cabin, they were planning to present it to him during the wedding reception as some kind of emotional moment. I left dinner early because I was so angry I could barely speak. Later that night, I texted Matt. I said, "So you're getting the cabin?" He replied, "Yeah, Mom and Dad told me." "Isn't that amazing? Don't make a big deal out of it, okay? They said you weren't really using it." That "don't make a big deal" line really got under my skin. I told him it was completely unfair, that I had helped pay for repairs, and always assumed it would be shared. He said, "You're overreacting. You make good money. You can buy your own vacation spot someday." That's when I decided I wasn't going to the wedding. I texted Emily the next morning and said something like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but I can't make it to the wedding after all." She was disappointed but polite. She asked if everything was okay, and I just said, "It's complicated, but it's nothing you did." My parents, though, lost it. They called me ungrateful, accused me of ruining Matt's big day, and said I was being petty over property. I told them it wasn't about the cabin. It was about fairness, honesty, and respect. I said, "You can't announce no gifts to everyone and then secretly make an exception for the golden child. That's not a no-gift wedding. It's a no-gift unless you're the favorite wedding." My mom started crying. My dad hung up, and Matt texted me later saying, "I can't believe you'd skip your only brother's wedding over something like this. You're being selfish." I didn't respond. The wedding happened last weekend. I stayed home. My cousin sent me pictures. Everything looked lovely. Apparently, during the reception, my parents did, in fact, surprise Matt and Emily by presenting them with a deed to the cabin. Everyone clapped. My aunt texted me later saying, "It was so beautiful when your parents gave them that gift. But we missed you." Now the whole family thinks I'm a jerk for boycotting my brother's wedding. My parents won't speak to me, and Matt sent a long message saying I tainted his wedding memories because people kept asking where I was. I keep going back and forth on this. On one hand, I know weddings are about celebrating the couple, not about property or fairness. Maybe I should have just swallowed my pride and attended. On the other hand, I can't shake how hypocritical the whole thing was. They wanted to seem like these selfless minimalists while accepting an expensive family property as a surprise. What really hurts is that it confirmed what I've known all along. I'll never be on equal footing with my brother in my parents' eyes. They didn't even think it would bother me. They just assumed I'd go along with it quietly like always. Now I'm the one being painted as bitter and dramatic. My mom even told my aunt that I ruined the mood by not showing up because people kept asking why I wasn't there. Apparently, my absence cast a shadow over the event. It's been 2 weeks, and I haven't spoken to any of them since. My best friend says she'd have done the same thing, but a few coworkers I confided in said I should have just gone for appearance's sake and dealt with the family drama later. I don't know. Maybe I handled it badly, but I can't help thinking, if I'd gone, I'd have been sitting there clapping along while they handed over a place that was supposed to be ours. I think I would have cried or snapped or just left halfway through, and that probably would have been worse. So yeah, now my parents are furious. My brother's wife probably thinks I hate her, and everyone else thinks I'm a petty brat who refused to attend a family wedding over a cabin. But it feels so much deeper than that. AITA? AITA for refusing to give up my vacation plans so my sister could have her dream wedding date. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I'm the oldest of 3, and I'm used to being the one who smooths things over, compromises, and does what makes everyone else happy. My younger sister, Katie, 27F, has always been the opposite. She's impulsive, dramatic, and used to getting her way because my parents never wanted to upset her. I love her, but growing up with her was exhausting. For context, I've been dating my boyfriend, Lucas, 34M, for 5 years. We've both been working hard and saving money, and earlier this year, we finally decided to take a proper 2-week vacation to Europe. We booked it in January, got good deals, and have been counting down the days. The trip is in mid-September, flights and hotels paid in full, non-refundable. Now on to the issue. In July, Katie got engaged to her boyfriend, Aaron, 29M. They'd only been dating for about 8 months, which surprised everyone, but honestly, they seemed happy. Good for them. When she called to tell me, she was already buzzing with wedding plans. She wanted a big outdoor wedding, and apparently, she'd already been looking at venues even before the proposal. A few weeks later, she texted me saying she found the perfect venue. The catch? The only open date they had in the next 18 months was, September 14th, right in the middle of my vacation. I thought it was unfortunate timing, but I figured she'd either choose a different venue or pick a date that worked for everyone. Nope. A couple of days later, she called me in tears saying that this was her dream venue, and that she couldn't possibly wait another year. She told me she was booking it for the 14th and hoped I could move some stuff around. I reminded her that my trip was fully paid for and that rescheduling would cost thousands of dollars in cancellation and rebooking fees. I told her I'd love to be there, but there was no way I could make it work unless she picked a different weekend. She lost it. She said I was selfish for prioritizing a vacation over her wedding, that family comes first, and that she couldn't believe I'd miss her big day over a trip that could happen anytime. I calmly reminded her that we'd been planning this trip for nearly a year and that she hadn't even been engaged when we booked it. She hung up crying and told our parents I was refusing to come to her wedding. Cue the family drama. My mom called me the next day saying that I needed to be flexible and that Katie was heartbroken. I explained again that it wasn't about not caring. It was about logistics and money. My dad was quieter, but said something like, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for your sister." I said, "So is a trip we've been saving for over 5 years." Lucas told me he'd support whatever I decided, but gently pointed out that we shouldn't have to cancel a trip we'd been planning for so long just because Katie wanted a specific date. I agreed. Katie started sending guilt-trippy messages in the family group chat. Things like, "Can't believe my own sister won't be there for me on the most important day of my life," or "Guess I know where I stand." Then she posted a cryptic Instagram story about selfish people showing their true colors. I tried again to reason with her. I told her that I could absolutely attend if she picked any date outside those 2 weeks, even if it meant next year. She told me that was non-negotiable because she'd already mentally planned everything for that exact weekend. She also said that if I really cared, I'd just reschedule. Here's where things got worse. My mom called again and asked if Lucas and I could maybe shorten our trip, fly back early, so we could make it. I laughed because the wedding would be right in the middle of our itinerary. Cutting it short would mean wasting half our flights and losing all our hotel bookings. My mom said she'd chip in a bit to help us cover rebooking fees. Her offer? $300. The fees would have been closer to $2,000. I said no. She sounded disappointed, but didn't push it further. Katie, however, escalated. She told me if I missed the wedding, she wouldn't forgive me. She said she wouldn't come to mine if I ever got married, and that I was choosing money over family. 2 months later, she sent out her save the dates. The wording? Join us as we celebrate the wedding of Katie and Aaron, surrounded by those who truly love us. That last part stung. Since then, my family's been divided. My cousins and aunts mostly agree with me, saying Katie's being unreasonable. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but clearly lean toward keeping the peace, which means siding with Katie. Even my grandma, who usually defends me, said she understands both sides, but that weddings are emotional. Lucas and I are still going on our trip. We're excited, but it's bittersweet because I know there's going to be fallout. Katie has stopped speaking to me entirely. She even told our younger brother that she's considering asking one of her friends to be maid of honor instead of me because I don't deserve the title. Last week, my mom called again saying Katie's still really upset and that maybe I should think about what kind of message I'm sending by not attending. I snapped a bit and said, "The message I'm sending is that I'm not going to rearrange my life every time Katie throws a tantrum." My mom said I was being cruel and hung up. Now I'm questioning myself. It's true that it's just a vacation, and maybe I could have tried harder to compromise. But it also feels unfair that I should be expected to sacrifice thousands of dollars and months of planning because my sister picked a date without even checking. Part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn. Maybe I should have offered to fly back just for the weekend, even though it would have been exhausting and expensive. Another part of me feels like standing my ground is the only way to finally set a boundary with her. The wedding's coming up soon, and every time someone brings it up, I feel torn between guilt and frustration. Lucas says Katie's tantrum is proof that she's still the same person who used to steal my clothes and cry until I got grounded for it. My dad told me privately that he thinks I'm right, but wishes it could have worked out differently. So here I am, feeling like the villain in my family's latest drama. I'll be eating pasta in Italy while my sister walks down the aisle, and I can already imagine the awkward family gatherings for years to come. AITA for not canceling my vacation for my sister's wedding. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house after she ruined my wedding. I, 31F, got married last month to my husband, Leo, 34M. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but instead, it turned into an embarrassing, chaotic nightmare that I'm still cleaning up emotionally and financially. The person responsible for all of it is my older sister, Vanessa, 35F, and now she's calling me cruel because I won't let her move back in with me after she got evicted. A little backstory. Vanessa and I were never super close growing up. She was the cool older sister who always had friends, went out, and somehow got away with everything. I was more of a rule follower. My parents were stricter with me and always seemed to make excuses for her. Vanessa's had a rough few years. She lost her job during the pandemic, had a messy breakup, and moved in with me temporarily in 2021. I didn't mind helping her at first, but she never paid rent, left dishes everywhere, and treated my house like her personal crash pad. When Leo proposed to me in 2023, I gently told Vanessa she needed to find her own place before the wedding because we wanted our house to be just ours. She acted fine with it, even said she'd be out way before then. Spoiler, she wasn't. We gave her a 6-month notice, then a 3-month reminder, then one last nudge a month before the wedding. She kept saying, "Don't worry, I'll figure it out." 2 weeks before the wedding, she was still there, surrounded by boxes she hadn't packed. My parents begged me to let her stay until after the wedding because she's family, and you don't want tension before your big day. I agreed reluctantly, but told her clearly. She was not to make the wedding about her, and she was moving out the week after. The day of the wedding started beautifully. Everything was going perfectly until the reception. Vanessa showed up wearing a long, sparkly white dress. Not ivory, not champagne white. She said she didn't realize it was too close to mine. People were whispering, and I was trying to ignore it. During the speeches, my maid of honor, my best friend, not Vanessa, gave a heartfelt toast. Vanessa was supposed to speak after her, but when she got up, she was visibly drunk. She started her speech with, "Well, I wasn't sure I'd even be invited to this thing since my little sister loves to remind me how much better her life is." The room went silent. I felt my face burning. She rambled for several minutes about how Leo used to have a crush on her back in the day. They met once, briefly, years ago when he came to a party I hosted, and how she always knew he'd end up with someone like me, safe, predictable, and boring. People gasped. My husband's jaw dropped. Before anyone could stop her, she tried to start a fun story about how I wasn't always so classy and hinted at something deeply personal from my college days. My dad and Leo's brother had to physically take the mic from her. She stormed out, crying that we were humiliating her. The rest of the night was tense. Some guests left early. My husband's grandmother asked if there was some family feud she didn't know about. I cried in the bridal suite for an hour. Vanessa texted me the next morning saying she was sorry if I was offended, but she'd had a rough week and just wanted to feel included. When we came back from our honeymoon, I told her she needed to leave immediately. She refused, saying she had nowhere to go. I gave her 2 days. On day 3, Leo and I came home to find she'd left, but not before taking my AirPods, a bottle of perfume, and several unopened wedding gifts because I deserved something too. She blocked me afterward. Fast forward to now, 3 months later. I got a call from my mom saying Vanessa's been evicted from her new apartment. She apparently stopped paying rent after 2 months and asking if she could stay with me just for a while. I said absolutely not. My mom accused me of being heartless and said family doesn't turn its back on family. I reminded her that Vanessa literally ruined my wedding and stole from me. Mom said I was holding a grudge and that Vanessa has learned her lesson. Vanessa herself texted me later, saying she doesn't understand why I'm still mad, and that it's just a wedding, not a war crime. She said she'd pay me rent this time, which I do not believe for a second, and that it's freezing outside and she has nowhere else to go. I told her she needs to figure her own life out, and that maybe this is the push she needs to take responsibility for herself. She blew up at me, saying I was acting high and mighty because I finally have a husband, and that I'm using his money to feel powerful. For context, Leo and I split expenses 50-50ths, and she knows that. Now my parents are barely speaking to me. My dad says he understands my frustration, but thinks I could show more compassion. My mom called me crying last night, saying, "What if something happens to her? How will you live with yourself?" I love my family, but I also feel like I've been taken advantage of for years. Every time Vanessa messes up, they all scramble to save her, and she never changes. When I needed help after she trashed my wedding, no one stood up for me. When I said I was hurt, I got told to forgive and move on. Part of me feels guilty because she really doesn't have anywhere else to go, but another part of me feels like if I cave now, she'll never learn. She's 35. She's had endless chances, and after everything she's said and done, I honestly don't feel safe having her in my home again. Leo is firmly on my side and said, if she comes back, I'm moving out until she's gone. He's normally calm and diplomatic, so hearing that from him really hit me. He said he can't stand the thought of her living with us again after the way she treated me. So now I'm stuck being the cold, selfish sister in the family narrative, even though all I did was set a boundary. My parents are furious, my husband's proud of me, and my friends say I'm right, but deep down, I can't shake this nagging feeling that maybe I should have just let her stay one last time. AITA for refusing to take her in? AITA for refusing to help my sister after she accidentally burned down part of my house. So, this all started about 6 months ago when my younger sister, Leah, 27F, went through a bad breakup. I, 32F, live with my husband, Dylan, 34M, and our 2 kids, 6 and 3, in a house that we bought about 5 years ago. It's not a mansion, but it's a comfortable home we've worked hard for. Leah was devastated by her breakup and asked if she could stay with us for a few weeks until she got back on her feet. Dylan wasn't thrilled, but he agreed because he knew she didn't really have anywhere else to go. The first few weeks were fine. Leah helped a bit around the house, bought some groceries, and played with the kids. But then a few weeks turned into months. She didn't contribute to rent or utilities, barely cleaned up after herself, and would stay up all night watching TV in the living room, leaving lights on everywhere. I had to constantly remind her to keep it down because the kids were sleeping. What really made things tense was how Leah treated Dylan. She'd make little snide comments, like calling him uptight for wanting quiet in the evenings or saying he didn't know how to relax. She would also sometimes walk around the house in just a big t-shirt and no pants. Dylan told me he was uncomfortable, and when I brought it up to Leah, she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, please, he's not my type." After about 4 months of this, Dylan finally told me he wanted her gone. I agreed, but I didn't want to kick her out suddenly, so I gave her 2 weeks' notice to find somewhere else. She got upset, saying we were abandoning her when she was still emotionally fragile. But I stood firm. She eventually said she'd go stay with a friend at the end of the month. Fast forward to her last week at our place. I came home one afternoon to the smell of smoke. Leah had apparently decided to make comfort food for the kids as a goodbye gesture. Mac and cheese, but gourmet, which in her version meant she tried to flambe the cheese sauce with brandy. She left the pan unattended while she was on the phone, and the flames caught the curtains. Dylan managed to put it out with the fire extinguisher before it spread too far, but the kitchen wall and cabinets were scorched, and the smoke damage was awful. The insurance estimate said repairs would cost around $19,000. Our deductible is $2,000. When we confronted Leah, she cried and said it was just an accident and that she didn't have the money to pay anything. She said we could claim on insurance and that this is why people have coverage. Dylan was furious and said she needed to pay us back the deductible at least, but she kept insisting it wasn't fair because she didn't do it on purpose. We ended up covering the deductible ourselves because we couldn't wait to start repairs. Leah moved out 2 days later. We didn't talk much after that. Now here's where the current problem comes in. A few weeks ago, Leah called me in tears again. She said her car broke down, she was behind on rent, and she might lose her job because she couldn't get to work. She asked if she could borrow $1,000 to fix her car. I told her no. I said we were still recovering financially from the fire and that we weren't in a position to give her money. She immediately got defensive and said, "You can't still be mad about that. It was an accident. You're being cruel for holding a grudge." I said it wasn't about being cruel. It was about boundaries. I reminded her that her accident had cost us a ton of money, stress, and weeks of disruption. I I said I loved her, but that I couldn't keep bailing her out. She started crying and accused me of choosing money over family. Since then, my mom has called and told me I'm being cold-hearted. Apparently, Leah told everyone that I'm punishing her for a mistake and refusing to help family in need. Mom said Leah has been through so much and that I'm the more stable one, so it wouldn't kill me to be compassionate. I told my mom that Leah's mistakes always become my responsibility, and I'm done playing that role. Mom said I was acting like a stranger and hung up. Now the whole family is divided. My brother thinks I'm right, but my mom and aunt think I'm being petty and that I owe Leah some empathy. Dylan fully supports me and says he doesn't want her anywhere near us again, especially after the fire. To be honest, I'm starting to feel guilty. Leah has always been the dramatic one, but she's also my sister. And while the fire wasn't intentional, it was still her fault. Part of me wonders if I should have just lent her the money to keep the peace. But another part of me is so tired of always cleaning up her messes, literally and figuratively. For context, Leah has a pattern of this kind of behavior. When we were younger, she once took my car without asking and wrecked it, then cried until my parents paid for repairs. When she lived with a roommate in college, she accidentally flooded the apartment by falling asleep while running a bath. There's always some accident, always someone else footing the bill. I feel awful for her, but I also feel like she never learns because no one ever makes her face consequences. I've been enabling her for years, and maybe this is just me finally saying enough. Still, I can't shake the guilt. Every time I talk to my mom, she brings up how family helps family and how I'll regret turning my back on Leah someday. But then I look at my kids playing in our half-rebuilt kitchen, and I remember that her accident could have burned down the entire house with them inside. So now I'm wondering if maybe I am the asshole for refusing to help her when she's clearly struggling. I don't want to be cruel, but I also don't want to be stupid. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she burned part of my house down and now needs money again. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the house I inherited from our parents, even though she says she deserves it more. I, 33F, inherited my parents' house 2 years ago when they both passed away within a few months of each other. It's a modest 3-bedroom home in the suburbs, the same one my sister Emily, 29F, and I grew up in. My parents' will was very clear. The house goes to me, and their remaining savings would be split evenly between us. I was surprised by this arrangement at the time because Emily had always been the favorite, and I half expected her to get the house. But my parents told me before they died that they wanted me to have it because I had taken care of them during their last few years while Emily had moved out of state and rarely visited. For context, I moved back home when Mom got sick. I was 27 at the time, living in a small apartment and working full-time as a dental hygienist. When Dad's health declined too, I cut my hours, handled hospital visits, cooked, cleaned, and basically ran a household. Emily, on the other hand, was living a few states away, hopping between jobs, and posting about her find-yourself trips on Instagram. My parents never asked her to come help because they didn't want to burden her, but I could see how much it hurt them that she wasn't around. When the will was read, Emily didn't say much at first. She just said, "Wow, okay," and walked out of the lawyer's office. Later that night, she texted me something like, I guess congrats on your house. I hope you enjoy living in my childhood memories." I didn't respond. It stung, but I figured time would help. Fast forward 2 years. I've been living in the house, keeping it in good shape. I even turned one of the spare rooms into a home office since I started working remotely during the pandemic. I've hosted family holidays here, and sometimes Emily would come for a few days. We weren't super close, but we were civil. Until last month, Emily called me one evening crying, saying her lease was up, her roommate bailed, and she couldn't afford rent in her city anymore. She said she wanted to move back home. I assumed she meant near me, not with me. But then she asked if she could move into the house, my house. I hesitated and said I'd have to think about it because I value my space and privacy, and we've never lived well together. She immediately got defensive, saying, "It's not like I'm asking for a mansion. It's literally our parents' house, and I have nowhere else to go." I reminded her gently that it wasn't our house anymore. It was mine. I also offered to help her find an affordable apartment nearby, and even said I'd cover her first month's rent to help her get settled. She scoffed and said I was being stingy and cold. Then she hung up. A few days later, she showed up at my doorstep with her car packed full of stuff. She said, "I figured you'd come around, so I just drove down." I was completely thrown off. I told her she couldn't just move in without my permission, and she started crying again, saying I was heartless and that mom and dad would never want me to kick family out onto the street. I told her I wasn't kicking her out because she'd never been in. I offered to pay for her to stay in a motel for a week while she figured something out. She refused, said she wasn't leaving, and literally dragged her bags onto the porch. It escalated quickly. I ended up calling a friend who's a police officer, not to arrest her, but to help mediate because she was shouting that she had rights to the house. When the officer arrived and saw the paperwork I showed him, he calmly told Emily that legally the house was mine and that she had to leave. She cried, packed up her things again, and drove off. I haven't seen her since. Now, here's where things get worse. My aunt, our mom's sister, called me 2 days later, furious. She said Emily had come to stay with her temporarily and was devastated because I had thrown her out of her own childhood home. I tried to explain the situation, but my aunt kept cutting me off, saying families should help each other and that my parents would be ashamed of how selfish I've become. Then a cousin posted something vague on Facebook like, "Some people care more about property than family. Money changes people." I knew exactly who it was about. I don't usually care about gossip, but it hurt seeing extended family side with Emily without even asking my side. I started doubting myself. Maybe I'm being too rigid. It's not like Emily was asking to own the house, just to stay for a while. But knowing her history, she's irresponsible with money, constantly borrowing things she never returns, and has a habit of turning temporary stays into indefinite freeloading. I just didn't want to go through that in my own home. I've worked hard to make this place stable and peaceful, and I can already picture the chaos if she moved in. I'd probably end up paying her bills, cleaning up after her, and walking on eggshells in my own home. A week later, Emily sent me a long text saying I robbed her of her childhood home, that I used our parents' sickness to earn their favor, and that I'll regret choosing a house over family. She blocked me after sending it. My friends are split. Some say I'm totally right and that Emily is manipulative. Others think I should have just let her stay temporarily until she found her footing because blood is blood. I'm torn because I don't want to be cruel, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of again. Part of me wonders if I'm clinging too tightly to the idea of this house as mine when it's so emotionally tied to both of us. Maybe I could have handled it with more compassion. But another part of me feels like Emily has always used guilt to get her way, and this is just another version of that. It's been almost a month since we last spoke. My aunt still won't talk to me. Every time I drive past the framed photos of my parents in the hallway, I feel a mix of guilt and anger. Guilt that maybe I could have helped more, anger that everyone's forgotten the years I spent caring for them while Emily was off living her best life. So here I am, living alone in the house that feels less like home lately, wondering if I'm the villain for setting a boundary that maybe my parents didn't anticipate would cause such a rift. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the house I inherited? AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in after he lost his job? 29F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment in a decent part of the city. My boyfriend, Matt, 30M, and I have been together for 6 years, and we've been living together for 4. We've worked hard to get to a place where we're financially stable, can take vacations occasionally, and enjoy a comfortable lifestyle. My younger brother, Kevin, 27M, has always had a different approach to life. He's bright and capable, but struggles with consistency, responsibility, and following through on commitments. Kevin recently lost his job at a small tech company. He's been bouncing around a bit and never really saved anything. So suddenly he's facing the reality of unemployment with almost no financial cushion. After a particularly stressful week of job hunting, he called me and asked if he could move back in temporarily until he finds something new. I told him that I understood his situation and wanted to support him, but I couldn't let him move in. Matt and I have our routines, bills, and responsibilities, and we've worked hard to make our space a calm, stable environment. I've let him stay with me for short periods before when emergencies happened, like a night or two when he had nowhere to stay. But living here for an indefinite period is different. I explained that I couldn't risk tension, stress, and potential arguments, especially since Kevin has a habit of leaving dishes in the sink for days, being loud late at night, and not contributing financially unless pressed. Kevin became upset. He said that I was being selfish, that families should support each other, and that he thought I would be there for him without hesitation. I reminded him that supporting someone doesn't have to mean letting them move into your home indefinitely, especially when past experiences suggested it could be more harmful than helpful. He accused me of prioritizing my boyfriend over my brother, which isn't true. Matt and I are partners and manage our household together, so any decision about someone living here has to be mutual. The conversation escalated quickly. Kevin said I was cold and uncaring, that I was more interested in my comfort than in helping my family. I tried to explain that I could help him in other ways. I offered to help with his resume, contact people in my network, and even pay for some job-related expenses if he needed assistance. He refused all of that and stormed out, saying he wouldn't speak to me until I got my priorities straight. Now, my parents have gotten involved. They know Kevin has no job and nowhere to stay. They think I'm overreacting and it should just let him move in temporarily. My dad said that I'm being too rigid and that sometimes family comes first, even if it's inconvenient. My mom mentioned that when they were my age, they stayed with relatives for months while figuring things out, and that I should be more understanding. I explained our financial situation and how our household works, but they think I'm making excuses. Matt supports my decision fully. He's lived with Kevin before and knows how challenging it can be. He says that our home should remain a stable space for us, and bringing Kevin in under these circumstances is almost guaranteed to create tension. We both agreed that we'll help Kevin in every way possible without letting him live with us. I didn't hear from Kevin for a week, then I got a message from him on social media. He said he's cutting me out of his life because I'm not the sister he thought I was. He added that I clearly care more about my boyfriend in my life than I do about family. This hurt more than I expected, not because of the words themselves, but because he's ignoring the fact that I've offered him tangible help in ways that don't involve me sacrificing my living situation and mental health. I've started to feel guilty, though. I know Kevin is struggling, and part of me feels like I could be doing more. I know people on Reddit have varying opinions about family obligations, but I also know from experience that letting Kevin move in temporarily often turns into months of friction, arguments, and resentment. I also don't want to create a precedent where he assumes he can just show up whenever he's in trouble. I spoke to a close friend about it, and she said I'm not wrong to set boundaries, but she also said that Kevin probably feels abandoned. I get that. I feel torn because I don't want to be seen as cold, but I also need to protect my own mental health and relationship. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in after losing his job? I feel like I'm doing the responsible thing by helping him in other ways, but everyone else is telling me I'm being heartless. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée have their wedding at my house after they kicked me out of their bridal party for being too emotional. I, 28F, own a decent-sized farmhouse that I inherited from my grandmother 3 years ago. It's on about 5 acres of land, with a big backyard, a renovated barn, and a pond, the kind of property people always say would make a dream wedding venue. When my younger brother, Liam, 26M, got engaged to his fiancée, Kara, 25F, last year, they asked if they could have their wedding here. I was thrilled for them and immediately said yes. Liam and I were close growing up. We lost our parents in a car accident when I was 19 and he was 17, so it's always felt like it was just the two of us against the world. I helped him get through college, co-signed his first car loan, and even let him live with me rent-free for a year when he was job hunting. I genuinely love my brother and wanted to see him happy. When Kara joined the picture, I tried to make her feel welcome. She's a bit intense, but I chalked that up to wedding stress. She's very particular about aesthetics and social media presence. She's an influencer who documents everything, and she has very specific ideas about curating her image. Still, I agreed to let her and Liam use my home for their big day. They wanted an outdoor ceremony by the pond and a barn reception. I even offered to help with landscaping, decor, and to let them stay in the house the weekend of the wedding for free. They were over the moon and told everyone how generous I was. Fast forward to 3 months ago, when Kara asked me to be one of her bridesmaids. I accepted, even though I'm not really into the whole matching dresses and mimosas thing. I wanted to support her and Liam. Everything seemed fine until the bachelorette party, which is where things started to unravel. Kara's maid of honor, Becca, planned a weekend trip to Nashville. I don't drink much, and I've been dealing with anxiety for the past couple of years, which Kara knows about. So I told them in advance that I'd join for dinner and a night out, but probably skip the heavy clubbing part. Everyone said that was fine. But during the trip, Kara got very drunk and started talking about how she was so grateful to finally have a real family, and that Liam's family didn't exactly set the bar high. I was sitting right there. It stung, and I said as calmly as I could, "Hey, I know you're joking, but that's kind of hurtful. Liam and I went through a lot, and I've always tried to make you feel included." Instead of apologizing, Kara rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, don't make this a thing. You're always so sensitive. We're just trying to have fun." The mood died after that. The next morning, I woke up to find out that Kara and 2 of the bridesmaids had gone out without me the night before, leaving a note that said, "Didn't want to wake the grandma energy." I texted her later and said I felt a bit excluded, but she responded with, "You just need to learn to loosen up. Not everything is about you." 2 weeks later, Liam called and said that Kara was reconsidering my role in the bridal party because I was making things tense. I was shocked. He said it wasn't personal, but Kara thought I might cry or get anxious on the wedding day and mess up the vibe. I asked him if he was seriously uninviting his only sister from standing beside him at his wedding in our childhood home, and he just said, "It's easier this way. We don't want any drama." That was the moment something broke inside me. I told him that if they thought I was too emotional to be part of their day, then they could find another place to have it. I told them I was withdrawing my offer to host the wedding. Kara immediately blew up my phone with angry texts, calling me selfish and vindictive. She said I was punishing them for setting boundaries and that I was jealous of their happiness. I ignored her, but then my brother called, livid. He said I was destroying his dream wedding over hurt feelings, and that Kara had already designed the whole thing around my property. I reminded him that it was my property and I had been doing them a favor for free. He said I was being petty and cruel and hung up on me. A few days later, my aunt, who's on Kara's side for reasons I still don't understand, called and said I was overreacting. She said that weddings make people emotional and that hosting it at your house is the least you can do after everything Liam and I have been through. But then I found out something that really sealed my decision. One of Kara's friends, who's still friendly with me, sent me screenshots from Kara's group chat. In them, Kara called me a walking therapy case and said she was only inviting me to be a bridesmaid for optics. She joked that my house would finally serve a purpose and that she didn't want me in any of the professional photos because she ruins the aesthetic. I was shaking when I read it. All that fake kindness, all those times she smiled to my face, and behind my back, she was mocking me. I sent the screenshots to Liam and said, "This is who you're defending." He didn't respond for 2 days, then texted, "I don't want to get involved in drama." Kara already apologized for those messages. I never saw any apology, by the way. After that, I told him the offer to host the wedding was permanently off the table. I blocked Kara and stopped responding to family members trying to guilt me into just letting it go. Since then, the wedding plans have apparently fallen apart. They can't find another venue they can afford, and now my brother's been telling everyone that I ruined his wedding out of spite. Even some mutual friends are saying I should have just taken the high road. But here's the thing, I genuinely didn't want revenge. I just couldn't stomach the idea of hosting 2 people who treated me like a prop. My home isn't some Instagram backdrop for someone who mocks me behind my back. Still, I do miss my brother. I wish things hadn't gone this way. He was my best friend for most of my life, and now he won't even speak to me. I've started to wonder if I did go too far. Maybe I should have just swallowed my pride and let them have their wedding here for the sake of peace. So, AITA for refusing to let them use my house after being kicked out of the bridal party and insulted. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my baby after they ruined my wedding and still insist they did nothing wrong. I, 29F, have been married to my husband Daniel, 31M, for 3 years. We dated for 5 years before getting married, and during most of that time, my relationship with my parents was complicated but manageable. They've always had strong opinions about what's proper and respectable. My mother in particular has a way of controlling people by acting like she's the most reasonable person in the room while twisting everything you say. I'm an only child, and my parents were thrilled when I got engaged. At first, they were super supportive, offering to help at the wedding. But it became clear that help meant takeover. My mom wanted to plan everything, down to what color lipstick I should wear and what song should play during the first dance. When I gently pushed back, she accused me of being ungrateful and selfish. Things escalated when she insisted that I invite her best friend's son, Ethan, who I briefly dated for 2 months in college. I said no, obviously. My mom said it would be awkward for a friend if he wasn't invited. I held my ground, and she pouted for weeks. Fast forward to the rehearsal dinner. My parents were paying for about half the wedding, so I tried hard to keep things civil. The night seemed fine until my dad stood up to make a toast. I thought he was going to say something sentimental, but instead, he launched into a speech about how proud they were that I was finally marrying a man who could handle me. He made jokes about my stubborn streak and said Daniel was a brave soul. People laughed awkwardly, and I wanted to crawl under the table. Daniel was furious but tried to smile through it. The next day was the wedding, and it should have been the happiest day of my life. Everything went perfectly up until the reception. I noticed my mom whispering with her friend, yes, the one whose son I refused to invite. Then, during the bouquet toss, someone shouted Ethan's name, and sure enough, he walked into the hall holding a bouquet of flowers. My mom had invited him behind my back. The whole room froze. Daniel immediately walked out. I followed him, leaving the guests in chaos. My mom ran after me, saying it was just a sweet surprise. I screamed at her, told her she'd crossed every possible line, and told her to leave. She cried, said I was overreacting, and tried to guilt-trip me about embarrassing her in front of everyone. I didn't speak to my parents for nearly 6 months after that. When we finally talked, they refused to apologize, saying they were only trying to make the day more special. Daniel wanted nothing to do with them, but I eventually agreed to start limited contact again because I missed having parents. A year later, I got pregnant. I told them after the first trimester, and they acted overjoyed, calling constantly, sending baby clothes, and telling everyone they knew that they were going to be grandparents. I was cautious, but tried to be polite. When my due date was close, my mom started demanding to be in the delivery room. I told her no, that would just be me and Daniel. She started crying again and said, after everything we've done for you, you're shutting us out? I reminded her that they still hadn't apologized for the wedding disaster. She said, we're family. That should be enough. After our daughter was born, I didn't contact them right away. We were exhausted, adjusting to life as new parents. My mom began blowing up my phone, leaving voicemails saying I was breaking her heart. My dad sent Daniel a text saying, you can't keep our grandchild from us. About a week after we came home, they showed up at our house unannounced, carrying bags of gifts and expecting to come in. Daniel told them it wasn't a good time and closed the door. My mom immediately posted a long Facebook rant about how we were cruel and ungrateful, implying that Daniel was controlling me and that I was brainwashed. That was the last straw. I blocked them on everything. I sent a long email explaining that until they could take responsibility for their actions, not just at the wedding, but everything since, they wouldn't be part of our daughter's life. I told them that boundaries were not optional. It's been over a year since that email. They tried to get in touch through relatives, even sending letters addressed to our baby. My aunt called to say my parents are devastated and that grandparents deserve a chance. But I keep thinking about the wedding, the constant manipulation, the refusal to ever say sorry. Recently, my cousin got married, and my parents were there. Apparently, they told everyone that Daniel is controlling and that I'm keeping their granddaughter away for no reason. Now some family members think I'm being too harsh, saying it's been years and that I should forgive them for my daughter's sake. Daniel fully supports my decision. He says he never wants our daughter exposed to their toxic behavior. But sometimes I feel guilty, like maybe I'm depriving my child of grandparents. Then I remember that they don't even acknowledge they did anything wrong. Last month, my dad sent a letter saying, "We'll always love you, but you can't punish us forever for one misunderstanding." That made my blood boil. One misunderstanding? They humiliated me at my own wedding, refused to apologize, guilt-tripped me throughout my pregnancy, showed up uninvited after birth, and slandered my husband online. Still, I sometimes wonder if I've taken it too far. Maybe I could let them meet our daughter in a public place, just once, to see how it goes. Daniel says it's a bad idea, that they'll twist it into proof that everything is fine and start pushing boundaries again. I've spent years in therapy trying to unlearn how much control my parents used to have over me. I know logically that setting boundaries doesn't make me cruel, but emotionally, it's harder. They're my parents. I always imagined they'd be in my child's life, but not like this. Now they're threatening to pursue grandparents' rights. I know they probably can't win that, but it shows how little they respect our choices. My mom even sent a message to my old work email saying she just wants to see her baby girl's baby, like I'm still a teenager who needs permission. My friends are divided. Some say I'm right to protect my family. Others say I should at least allow supervised contact because people change. But my parents haven't changed. They just want access without accountability. So, Reddit-style judgment time. AITA for refusing to let my parents meet their granddaughter until they apologize and take real responsibility for what they've done. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my late wife's wedding dress for their wedding. So, for some background, I, 36M, lost my wife, Emily, 2 years ago. She passed away suddenly due to complications from an undiagnosed heart condition. We've been married for 5 years, together for 9, and she was my best friend since college. Her passing absolutely destroyed me. For a long time, I could barely function. My world revolved around her. I started therapy, took time off work, and only recently started feeling like I could breathe again. Emily and I didn't have kids, but she was incredibly close with my family, especially my younger brother, Sam, 28M. They got along great, and he often came to her for advice or just to talk. I never had an issue with their closeness. Emily was that kind of person, warm, kind, and genuine. My parents loved her too. After she passed, I kept some of her most personal belongings stored safely in a chest. Among them was her wedding dress. It wasn't an insanely expensive designer gown or anything, but it was her dress. She'd picked it out after weeks of searching, and I still remember how she looked when she stepped out of the fitting room in it. I don't think I've ever seen someone look more radiant in my life. That image is burned into my memory. About 6 months ago, Sam got engaged to his girlfriend, Lily, 26F. I was genuinely happy for them. Lily is nice enough, a bit headstrong and opinionated, but nothing terrible. I've been supportive, offered to help with some costs, since Sam doesn't make much yet. Everything was fine until last month. Lily came to my house one evening, saying she wanted to talk about something important. She told me she'd seen pictures of Emily's dress in my parents' wedding album, and she absolutely loved it. She said it was vintage but elegant, and exactly her style. Then she asked if she could wear Emily's dress for their wedding. I froze. At first, I thought she was joking. But no, she was completely serious. She said it would be a beautiful way to honor Emily's memory and keep her spirit in the family. I told her, as gently as I could, that I wasn't comfortable with that. That dress was deeply personal to me and represented something sacred. Lily got quiet, then said I was letting grief turn me into a gatekeeper. She argued that Emily would have wanted her to be happy, and that it would be wasteful to leave such a beautiful gown locked away. I told her this wasn't about waste. It was about respect. I wasn't ready for anyone else to wear something that meant so much to me. She left looking upset, and later that night, Sam called. He said Lily was crying and felt humiliated. I explained my side, but he said he didn't see the big deal. He said I was overreacting and that Emily wasn't even here anymore. That line hit me hard. I told him if he couldn't understand how painful this was, we needed some space. A few days later, my mom called, trying to mediate. She said she understood my feelings, but also thought I could find it in my heart to let Lily wear the dress just for one day. She framed it like a family bonding thing. How Emily would have loved to see love continue through someone else. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't changing my mind. That's when things escalated. Sam posted a vague message on Facebook about how some people let their grief make them selfish. Mutual friends started messaging me asking what happened. Then Lily's maid of honor texted me, calling me cruel for hoarding a dress that could bring joy to others. I finally had enough and told Sam that if this kept up, I wouldn't be attending their wedding at all. He accused me of trying to ruin his big day and said Emily would have been disappointed in me. That one really messed me up. I started doubting myself. Was I being petty? It's just a dress, right? Emily's gone, and maybe letting Lily wear could be a way of honoring her. But every time I imagine someone else walking down the aisle in it, I feel sick. A week ago, I went to my parents' house for dinner, and my mom pulled me aside again. She said she'd talked to Sam and Lily, and they were still hoping I'd come around. Then she dropped a bomb. Apparently, Lily had already gone to a seamstress with photos of Emily's dress and wanted to make some alterations to modernize it if I said yes. When I heard that, something in me snapped. I told my mom I didn't want to talk about it anymore and that the dress was mine to protect. Later that night, I took the chest with Emily's belongings and moved it to a storage unit under my name, just in case. I don't think Sam would ever break in or anything, but I suddenly didn't trust anyone not to try and borrow it behind my back. Now, most of my family thinks I'm being dramatic. My dad said he understands the sentiment, but also thinks I'm making things harder than they need to be. My aunt texted that she thinks it's sweet, Lily wants to wear the dress, and that I should learn to let go. The only person on my side is my best friend, who said, that dress is sacred. Nobody else should touch it. Sam and I haven't spoken in 3 weeks. Their wedding is in 4 months. I've thought about apologizing just to end the drama, but every time I picture Emily's dress altered or worn by someone else, I feel this cold rage and grief all over again. I don't think people understand. It's not just fabric. It's the last tangible piece of a life I built and lost. I'm not trying to control anyone's happiness. I'm just trying to protect what little I have left that feels connected to her. But seeing everyone act like I'm the villain has started to make me question if I'm just holding on to the past too tightly. Maybe I should have donated it years ago. Maybe Lily and Sam are right, that Emily wouldn't want me to be stuck in my grief. Still, every time I think of Emily's smile when she wore that dress, I know it's not something anyone else can step into. Not now, not ever. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée wear my late wife's wedding dress. AITA for refusing to let my cousin's daughter stay with me for an extended period even though it's family obligations. I, 32F, have always been someone who values my personal space and routines. I live alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a busy city, and I work a demanding job in IT that often has me working odd hours or needing to focus intensely. I also have a small social circle, but because of work and life responsibilities, I don't often entertain guests or have people over for extended periods. I'm not antisocial. I just really value my privacy and predictability. Recently, my cousin, 35F, whom I'll call Sarah, reached out to me about a situation with her daughter, Lily, 14F. Sarah and her husband are going through a separation, and it's become complicated regarding custody and living arrangements. Apparently, they agreed that Lily would stay with Sarah during the week and with her father on weekends. However, things got messy when Lily's father unexpectedly had to move abroad for work, leaving Sarah scrambling. Sarah's solution, she told me, was to have Lily stay with me for a few weeks until she could sort things out. I was taken aback. I asked her how long she meant, and she said it might be a month or more. I hesitated and explained that I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment, work long hours, and don't have experience taking care of a teenager full-time. I also mentioned that I have very specific routines for work, cooking, and personal time that would be impossible to maintain with someone staying full-time, especially a teenager who's used to her own routines. Sarah, however, seemed convinced this was doable and insisted that it would be good for Lily to spend time with family and that I could figure it out. She also made it clear that she couldn't afford to hire a babysitter or ask friends, so I was basically the only option she considered. I told her I didn't think it would work for me, and she got noticeably upset, saying I was being selfish and that family should support each other, especially in emergencies. I tried to compromise. I suggested maybe a weekend visit here and there, or helping her find a short-term sitter, or even a summer camp arrangement while she sorted things out. She didn't like any of those ideas. She kept pressing, reminding me that Lily is family and that this was just temporary. She even said she didn't understand why I wouldn't just step up since I had the space and means, even if it wasn't convenient. Things escalated when we got into a phone argument. Sarah accused me of not caring about Lily's well-being and implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over a child in need. I tried to explain that caring for a teenager full-time involves more than just having an apartment and basic necessities. It's emotional support, supervision, and stability, which I don't feel equipped to provide at the moment. She kept interrupting, telling me I was overthinking and that I should just be generous. I finally had to firmly say no. I told her I wouldn't be able to have Lily stay with me for weeks at a time and that she would need to find another solution. She was furious and said she was disappointed in me, that I was a bad cousin, and that Lily would probably remember how I refused to help her in a time of need. She ended the call with, "I guess I should have known better than to ask you for anything." Since then, there's been tension in the family. Other relatives have contacted me, some sympathizing, some suggesting I should reconsider and help Lily. One of my aunts called me and said I was being harsh, and that family comes first, implying I should just deal with the inconvenience. Another cousin messaged me privately, saying they thought I was right to consider my own limitations and that it's okay to say no, even if family. I've been feeling guilty, though, because I do understand that Lily is in a tough spot and that I could theoretically help her. But at the same time, I worry about the stress, disruption, and the fact that I don't feel qualified to care for a teenager alone, especially someone I don't see often and who isn't used to my environment. I've also considered that even though it's temporary, a month or more could be a long time to manage, and I'd be sacrificing my work performance and personal life, which could have long-term consequences. I haven't spoken to Sarah since our argument. I did offer to help in other ways, like connecting her with childcare services or suggesting activities for Lily, but she brushed them off as not the same. I'm trying to hold my ground, but I keep replaying the conversation and wondering if I should have agreed, even reluctantly. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my cousin's daughter stay with me for an extended period, even though she's family and technically in need. The story is 6,178 characters, fitting within your requested range. If you want, I could draft a slightly longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more family dynamics, internal monologue, and tension build-up. It would make it read even more like the top AITA posts. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her choice of maid of honor. So, this is going to be long, and I need to give some context. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Lila, 25F, and we've always had a bit of a competitive relationship. Not in a mean way, but more like a constant comparison thing from childhood, where our parents would unintentionally highlight one of us over the other. I always try to shrug it off, but now that we're adults, some of the old issues have resurfaced. Lila recently got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Mark. They've been together for 5 years, and from what I can tell, their relationship is solid. I was happy for her, genuinely. However, things took a turn when she announced her wedding party. She chose her best friend, Naomi, as her maid of honor. Naomi and I have a very complicated history. Backstory: Naomi and I were close in high school, but had a falling out in college. Without going into too much detail, Naomi spread some pretty humiliating rumors about me that affected my social life for a long time. I confronted her multiple times, and while she apologized eventually, I never fully trusted her again. I moved away for grad school, and we drifted apart. When Lila announced Naomi as her maid of honor, I was honestly shocked. I expressed my feelings politely, telling her that I was uncomfortable with Naomi being in such a central role in her wedding. I suggested perhaps splitting duties or choosing someone neutral, but Lila got very defensive. She said that it was her wedding and that Naomi had been a big part of her life too. She also pointed out that the drama between Naomi and me was in the past and that I should just get over it. I tried to reason with her, explaining that this wasn't about trying to control her choices, but about my own mental well-being. I told her that being around Naomi would make me feel anxious and unwelcome at her wedding. I even offered to attend parts of the wedding if Naomi wasn't present, like the reception or a post-wedding brunch. Lila flat out refused and said that she didn't want her maid of honor excluded from any events, which is understandable from her perspective, I guess. Fast forward to the week of the wedding. I was stressed because I had already bought my dress and everything. I told Lila that I might not be able to attend after all. She called me, and the conversation turned heated. She accused me of being petty, of holding grudges, and of trying to ruin her special day. She even brought up our parents, saying they were disappointed that I wasn't putting family first. I explained calmly that my absence wasn't about them or the wedding itself. It was about protecting myself. I reminded her that I was there emotionally for her engagement and helped her plan a lot of things, but this was crossing a boundary I couldn't ignore. She hung up on me and later texted a group chat with other family members saying that I had chosen my own insecurities over family. Since then, our extended family has been split. Some people think I'm justified because Naomi had genuinely hurt me in the past, and my sister should respect that boundary. Others think I'm overreacting and being dramatic, especially because Naomi apologized years ago and because it's just a wedding. I didn't go to the wedding, and I got passive-aggressive texts from my sister and some relatives about it. My parents are upset. My aunt tried to guilt me, and even some friends are saying I might have been able to handle it better. I still feel strongly that attending the wedding with Naomi in such a central role would have been emotionally damaging for me. I've been struggling with anxiety about the whole thing for weeks leading up to it, and I honestly feel like stepping back was the only way to protect my mental health. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because her maid of honor is someone who seriously hurt me in the past, even though they've made amends? Or should I have swallowed my discomfort for the sake of family and celebration? I've tried reaching out post-wedding to smooth things over, but she hasn't responded except for some cold messages. I'm torn because I don't want this to destroy our relationship, but I also can't compromise on boundaries that seriously affect my emotional well-being. The wedding pictures keep popping up on social media, and I can't help but feel a mix of sadness and relief. Part of me wishes I could have been there to support her, but another part knows I would have felt miserable and resentful the entire time. I'm curious if people think I should have put my discomfort aside for family, or if standing my ground was the right move. Character count, 6574. Would you like me to draft another story with a slightly more dramatic family conflict angle? AITA for not letting my younger sister stay in my house after she caused a huge scene at my wedding? So, this all started about a year ago. I, 32F, recently got married to my husband, Alex, 34M. We've been together for 6 years, and when we finally decided to tie the knot, we went all out because it was our first big wedding. We spent over a year planning every detail, from the flowers to the seating arrangements, because we wanted the day to feel special and intimate. My younger sister, Emily, 27F, has always been kind of dramatic. She's my only sibling, and while I love her, she has a history of overreacting and making situations about herself. My parents, who are divorced, tend to spoil her and often take her side when conflict arises. She's always been that person who expects things to revolve around her, and I've learned to tread carefully. Fast forward to the wedding planning. We invited around 120 people, mostly family and close friends. Emily was included on the list, of course, and I asked her to be my maid of honor. I thought this would make her happy and give her a role where she could feel involved without overshadowing the day. I even let her help choose the bridesmaid dresses and pick some of the music for the reception. The trouble started when she got the dress she was supposed to wear. She hated it. She claimed it was unflattering, too conservative, and that it made her look older than she was. I reminded her multiple times that she could accessorize or get alterations, but she refused and said she would not wear it on my wedding day. I tried to be patient, but she continued to complain. The week of the wedding, she called me crying, saying she wouldn't come unless she got a completely different dress. I was frustrated because everything had already been planned, and there wasn't time to accommodate her last-minute demands. I told her no. She stormed off the phone, saying she might just not attend if she couldn't get her way. The day of the wedding, she showed up wearing a dress that was much too casual for the occasion, basically a cocktail dress when the wedding was black tie. I noticed she had also done her hair in a way that drew a lot of attention, completely different from what I had asked the bridal party to do. I tried to stay calm, but my mom and Emily kept whispering to each other about how inappropriate my dress was and how boring the decorations were. During the ceremony, Emily kept moving around and taking photos with her phone, even when I asked her to put it away. She also interrupted the officiant once because she thought it would be funny to make a joke about my ex-boyfriend. At that point, I whispered to my husband that she was making everything about herself, and he agreed that we'd handle it later. The real blow came during the reception. Emily got drunk. She had only had a few sips of champagne, but apparently she was upset about the dress and started loudly criticizing the food and decor to anyone who would listen. She even shouted, "I can't believe she made me wear this dress. I look like a grandma," in front of some of my family friends. People were uncomfortable, and I could see the tension rising. I pulled her aside and asked her to calm down and stop ruining the night. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling at me, saying I was controlling, selfish, and that I didn't care about her feelings. She called me a bridezilla in front of everyone and stormed out of the reception, slamming the doors so hard some of the windows shook. After the wedding, she refused to answer my calls for a week. Then, she texted me asking if she could stay at my house for a month because her apartment's heating broke. I told her no. I explained that after the wedding fiasco, I needed space, and I didn't feel comfortable having her in my home. She responded with a very long message, claiming I was punishing her and being cruel. She said she felt rejected by her own sister and implied I was ungrateful for all the help she gave me during wedding planning. Emily then started texting my parents to complain that I was kicking her out and that they needed to intervene. My parents sided with her, saying I should let her stay and that I was being too harsh. I refused, and eventually they stopped asking. The tension between us has only grown. Emily has stopped talking to me except for occasional passive-aggressive messages on social media. My parents are upset that she isn't visiting, and every family gathering has become awkward because of this. My husband supports my decision, but I can't help feeling guilty that my sister is so angry with me. So, Reddit, here's where I need an honest perspective. AITA for not letting my sister stay at my house after everything that happened to my wedding. I feel like she crossed too many boundaries and made the day about herself. But everyone else in my family thinks I'm being unreasonable. I know family dynamics are tricky, but I'm honestly struggling to see why I should compromise on my own home after the chaos she caused. At the same time, I don't want this to permanently destroy our relationship. Has anyone dealt with a similar situation where a sibling caused massive drama, and you had to set boundaries afterward? I'm open to hearing perspectives because I want to make sure I'm not overreacting. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move into my house even though I have more than enough room. I, 32F, bought my house 3 years ago after a decade of saving, living with roommates, and working 2 jobs. It's a 4-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. It's not some mansion, but it's mine, and that still feels surreal. My parents never owned property, and my brother Jason, 28M, has always kind of mocked me for being so uptight about money. He's the type who travels constantly, switches jobs every year, and always has some new adventure going on. We've had very different lives, and that's mostly been fine. Jason got engaged last year to Sarah, 26F, who I genuinely liked at first. She's bubbly and warm, and I thought she grounded him. They've both been living in a rented apartment about an hour away, but a few months ago, they got into some trouble. Their landlord decided to sell the building, giving them only 60 days to move. Around the same time, Sarah lost her job. Jason has been freelancing inconsistently, so money's been tight for them. A month ago, Jason called me saying they were in a pinch and asked if they could crash at my place for a little while. I asked how long, and he said, just until we get back on our feet, maybe 3 or 4 months tops. I hesitated, but said I'd think about it. I wanted to help, but the last time Jason stayed with me, after a breakup 5 years ago, he was a nightmare guest. He never cleaned up, constantly forgot to buy groceries, invited friends over without asking, and even used my car without permission once. When he moved out, my couch was ruined, and I found cigarette burns in the carpet of the guest room. I brought this up, and he laughed it off, saying, "Come on, that was years ago." I've grown up since then. I still wasn't convinced, so I told him I'd get back to him after thinking it over. A week later, I talked to our parents for advice, and that turned into a guilt trip I didn't expect. My mom said, "You have a house with extra rooms, and your own brother is struggling. How can you say no? Family helps family." My dad added that Jason and Sarah just need a little stability, and that I'd want the same help someday. The thing is, I already do help. I've lent Jason money multiple times, paid his phone bill once when it was about to be cut off, and helped him get a job interview at my company that he never showed up for. After thinking about it for a few days, I told him no. I said, "I'm sorry, but it wouldn't be good for me to have roommates again. I need my space and privacy." He got quiet, then asked, "Even for me?" I said, "Yes, even for you." He hung up shortly after. Cue another round of phone calls from my parents, telling me I was being selfish and holding a grudge over old stuff. My mom said, "You've got a 4-bedroom house all to yourself, and your brother's about to be homeless. Do you really think that's fair?" What they don't know is that I actually use all those rooms. One is my office. I work remotely as a project manager. One is a craft room that doubles as a small business workspace. The other is a guest room, which I keep for when my friends or my boyfriend visit from out of town. It's not like I'm hoarding space for fun. Jason eventually texted me saying, "I didn't realize you thought so little of me." Sarah's really hurt too. We thought family was supposed to have each other's backs. I told him it wasn't about thinking little of him, but about protecting my boundaries. He left me on read. Fast forward a few weeks, and I found out through my parents that Jason and Sarah ended up moving into my parents' place temporarily. My parents live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, so it's crowded. Apparently, Jason's been complaining nonstop about how cramped it is and how if I actually cared, I'd have let them stay with me instead. My mom has been guilt-tripping me more aggressively ever since. She called last week and said, "I just don't understand how you can sleep at night knowing your brother is sleeping on an air mattress when you've got a spare bed collecting dust." I tried to explain again, but she interrupted me, saying, "You sound just like your father's sister, cold and selfish." That one really stung. My boyfriend thinks I did the right thing and said, "You know exactly how it would go if they moved in. You'd be stressed, resentful, and probably footing all their bills again." But part of me still feels awful when I think about my brother sleeping on the floor at my parents' place. Then something happened last weekend that made me both angry and vindicated. My mom called in tears, saying there was a huge argument at her apartment. Apparently, Jason and Sarah have been leaving dirty dishes everywhere, using up all the hot water, and Sarah invited her cousin to stay for a few days without asking. My dad finally snapped and told them they had 2 weeks to find somewhere else. Jason then sent me a long, dramatic text that said, "I can't believe our own family is turning their backs on us. You all talk about boundaries and mental health like you're so enlightened, but you're just selfish people hiding behind excuses." I didn't reply, but now some of my extended family have started weighing in on Facebook, cousins and aunts posting vague statuses like, "Some people forget where they came from once they have a little money." I know they're about me. Now I'm torn between feeling justified and feeling heartless. I could afford to have them here for a few months. I could even manage the inconvenience. But I keep remembering how miserable I was last time, how entitled Jason acted, and how he always left me to clean up his messes, literally and figuratively. My best friend said something that stuck with me. Just because you can help doesn't mean you have to, especially when history shows it'll come at your expense. But I can't shake the guilt. My brother and I grew up sharing everything, even our room, and I know how rough it can be to feel like you have nowhere to go. Still, when I imagine them moving in, I see all the same patterns repeating. I see myself being the bad guy when I eventually have to kick them out, and I know it would destroy what little peace I've built for myself. So here I am, with half my family calling me selfish and my conscience calling me cold, wondering if standing my ground makes me an awful person. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move in, even though I technically could?